Hi there. Today we're diving into a fascinating topic: what hides behind the masks, images, and roles we all wear every day. We'll explore the true self, freedom from expectations, the soul as a journey, and why success doesn't always bring happiness. If you're interested in thinking about life more deeply than surface-level stories, stay with us. Subscribe to the channel so you don't miss new videos, hit the like button, and ring the bell. Here, we're searching not just for answers, but for ways to truly understand ourselves. Even when a famous person stands directly in front of us, we are rarely meeting who they truly are. What we see is an image, carefully shaped, repeatedly reinforced, and endlessly consumed. Fame does not simply reveal a person to the world, it constructs a mask that gradually replaces them in the public eye. The brighter the spotlight, the thicker the mask becomes. Popularity demands consistency. Audiences fall in love not with a human being, but with a version of them, a character, a voice, a set of familiar reactions. This image offers comfort. It distracts people from their own worries, gives them something predictable to admire, and allows them to project meaning onto someone else's life. But the image is not alive. It does not change naturally, does not grow freely, and does not doubt itself. The real person behind it does. Over time, the image begins to dominate. Interviews repeat the same stories. Appearances reinforce the same traits. Even spontaneous moments are filtered through expectation. When a famous person deviates from their established image, the public often reacts with disappointment or confusion, as if a contract has been broken. The unspoken agreement is simple: remain who we believe you are. In this way, popularity quietly imprisons. This phenomenon is not limited to celebrities. On a smaller scale, it exists everywhere, in workplaces, families, and social media profiles. We all learn, early in life, that being accepted often means being legible. We perform roles: the reliable one, the funny one, the strong one. The difference is that fame amplifies this process until escape feels impossible. When millions of people believe they know you, where does the real self go? The tragedy is not that the image is false, but that it becomes exclusive. The person is no longer allowed to be more than what is expected. Vulnerability feels dangerous, silence feels suspicious, change feels like betrayal. Eventually, the individual may no longer recognize themselves without the mask. They may possess everything associated with success: admiration, wealth, influence, and yet feel profoundly unseen. To be truly seen requires absence of performance. It requires space where no role is demanded and no narrative must be maintained. For someone famous, such spaces are rare. For anyone, they are fragile. And yet, this is where authenticity lives. Not in applause, not in recognition, but in quiet moments where nothing needs to be proven. Understanding that image is not the real person invites compassion. It reminds us that the figure we admire, criticize, or envy is still human beneath the projection. And it challenges us to ask a deeper question of ourselves: how much of who we present to the world is an image, and how much is truth? In recognizing the mask, we take the first step toward removing our own. The story of Jim Carrey's rise to fame often sounds like a modern fairy tale. Long before the world knew his name, a fortune teller allegedly told him that he would star in 3 major films and become wildly successful. Years later, that prophecy appeared to come true. Ace Ventura, The Mask, and Dumb and Dumber exploded onto the global stage, turning Carrey into one of the most recognizable faces in the world almost overnight. To many, this was proof that destiny exists, that success, once foretold, simply waits for its moment. Yet, fulfillment and success are not the same thing. From the outside, Carrey's achievement looked like the ultimate victory. He had money, admiration, creative freedom, and a permanent place in popular culture.
Millions laughed because of him. His characters became symbols of joy, chaos, and escape. By every external measure, the prophecy had delivered exactly what it promised. But prophecies rarely warn us about what comes after they are fulfilled. Success, once achieved, has a strange way of revealing its hidden cost. The roles that brought fame also locked Carey into a narrow identity. The world did not celebrate him as a complex human being. It celebrated him as a source of constant energy, exaggerated emotion, and comedy without depth. The success that lifted him up also reduced him. He became a product, a reliable provider of a specific feeling. When success is treated as the final destination, it becomes a trap. There is no clear path beyond it. Ambition loses direction. The question shifts from "who am I becoming?" to "how do I maintain this?" Instead of growth, there is preservation. Instead of exploration, repetition. What once felt like destiny slowly turns into obligation. This is the darker side of prophecy. When a future is predicted and then fulfilled, it can quietly erase freedom. Everything that follows feels like an afterthought. The dream has already been achieved, so any dissatisfaction seems ungrateful, even shameful. How can someone who has it all admit that something essential is missing? Carey's later reflections suggest that success did not bring the peace or clarity he expected. Instead, it forced him to confront a deeper truth. External achievement cannot resolve internal questions. Fame amplifies identity confusion rather than solving it. It gives louder applause, but not deeper answers. In this sense, success is not a reward, it is a mirror. It shows us with brutal honesty what we hoped achievement would fix. When it fails to do so, disillusionment follows. The trap is not success itself, but the belief that it will complete us. The real lesson of prophecy is not that dreams can come true, but that their fulfillment does not end the journey. If anything, it exposes the next, more difficult question. What remains when the dream is no longer enough? Success can open doors, but it cannot tell us where to go next.
Modern culture teaches us to equate success with happiness. Wealth, recognition, influence, and admiration are presented as proof that a life has been lived correctly. From a distance, it seems logical. If someone has everything others dream of, how could they possibly be unhappy? Yet this assumption collapses the moment we look closer. It is entirely possible to achieve extraordinary success and still feel profoundly empty. In the world of entertainment, this contradiction becomes especially visible. Show business is built on illusion. It rewards performance, not authenticity, and visibility, not truth. A successful public figure does not live a life so much as they maintain a role. Their days are shaped by expectations, schedules, appearances, and narratives that must be upheld. Even private moments are often framed by public identity. In such a system, happiness is not cultivated, it is staged. When success arrives, it brings applause, but also pressure. The person is no longer valued for who they are, but for what they represent. Laughter must be repeated. Popularity must be sustained. Failure is no longer personal, it becomes public. Over time, the individual learns to suppress doubt, exhaustion, and vulnerability because these emotions threaten the image that success depends on. The most dangerous illusion is the belief that achievement will resolve inner conflict. Many pursue success not out of joy, but out of hope. The hope that recognition will quiet insecurity, that wealth will bring peace, and admiration will replace self-doubt. But success cannot perform emotional labor. It does not heal old wounds or answer existential questions. Instead, it amplifies whatever already exists inside a person. This is why someone can have it all and still feel lost. External abundance does not guarantee internal coherence. In fact, it can deepen the divide between the public self and the private one. The more successful the role becomes, the harder it is to step outside it. Life turns into a performance with no intermission. Show business at its core is not life, it is representation. It demands energy without rest, confidence without uncertainty, and presence without authenticity. For some, this is exhilarating.
For others, it becomes suffocating. The human need for stillness, honesty, and unguarded connection cannot be satisfied by applause. True happiness requires alignment. It grows when actions, values, and identity point in the same direction. Success, however, often pulls these elements apart. The role demands one thing, the inner self longs for another. When this tension remains unresolved, no amount of external reward can compensate for the internal cost. Recognizing that success is not happiness is not a rejection of ambition, it is a recalibration. It reminds us that achievement is a tool, not a destination. Life does not begin when the performance is perfected. Life begins when the performance ends, when a person is allowed to exist without an audience. Only then can happiness move from illusion to experience.
The Truman Show is often remembered as a clever satire about reality television, surveillance, and media manipulation. Yet for those who look deeper, the film reveals something far more intimate, a metaphor for the life of a person who becomes famous. Beneath its bright colors and artificial smiles lies a quiet warning about what happens when a human being is turned into an image that must never break. Truman Burbank's world appears safe, orderly, and perfectly designed. Everyone knows their role. Every interaction serves a purpose. But this perfection is precisely the problem. Truman's life is a cage disguised as comfort. He is protected from chaos, but also from freedom. His choices are limited not by walls, but by expectations, by a reality carefully arranged so that he never steps outside the story written for him. For a famous person, this metaphor is painfully accurate. Fame constructs an invisible enclosure. There are no physical bars, yet every movement is observed, interpreted, and judged. The public does not ask who you are becoming, it asks whether you are still the person it recognizes. Growth becomes risky, change feels like rebellion, the role must remain intact. In The Truman Show, the audience believes they love Truman. They watch him daily, feel invested in his life, and celebrate his milestones. Yet their love is conditional. They love the version of Truman that fits the narrative. The moment he begins to question his world, the system responds with fear and control. Storms are created, exits are blocked. The illusion must be preserved at all costs. This mirrors the experience of fame in the real world. Once a person becomes known for a specific image, society unconsciously demands loyalty to that image. When the individual seeks privacy, silence, or transformation, it is often perceived as ingratitude or failure. The cage tightens, not because of malice, but because of collective expectation. The true revelation of the film lies in Truman's awakening. His realization is not dramatic at first, it is subtle. Small inconsistencies, repeated patterns, and scripted reactions slowly erode his trust in the world around him. This reflects the internal awakening of many public figures who eventually sense that something is wrong, that the life they are living is not entirely theirs. When Truman reaches the edge of his world and touches the wall of the sky, the metaphor becomes undeniable. The limit he feared was never real, it was designed. Yet stepping beyond it requires courage, because the cage, however false, is familiar. Freedom means uncertainty. It means leaving the audience behind. The Truman Show teaches that visibility is not freedom, and comfort is not truth. A life built for observation is not a life fully lived. Whether famous or anonymous, the danger remains the same, allowing expectation to replace choice. The moment of revelation arrives when a person realizes that authenticity is worth more than approval, and like Truman, the only way forward is through the exit that was never meant to be used. But here's the question I want to throw at you. Do you really think happiness comes from success? Or is it something deeper, something we can't measure? Is the true self really hiding behind the roles we play? Or is that just an illusion we tell ourselves? I want to hear your thoughts. Disagree? Debate? Challenge me in the comments below.
And if you enjoy exploring these questions and diving deeper into life's mysteries, make sure to subscribe and hit the bell so you never miss a discussion that makes you think. From the moment we are born, a story begins to form around us. We are given a name, assigned a nationality, placed within a family, and surrounded by expectations long before we are capable of choice. These elements are presented as facts, as definitions of who we are. Over time, they harden into identity. We rarely question them, not because they are inherently true, but because they are repeated with authority and love. A name, for example, feels deeply personal, yet it is chosen by someone else. It carries history, culture, and expectation. It becomes a label we respond to automatically, even though it once had nothing to do with us. Nationality functions in a similar way. Lines drawn on maps decide what language we speak, which stories we inherit, and which side of history we are expected to stand on. These constructs provide structure, but they also confine. Profession may be the most powerful label of all. What do you do is often the first question we ask a stranger, as if a person's worth can be summarized by their economic function. Careers are frequently shaped by parental hopes and social pressure rather than inner calling. Many are taught, subtly or directly, that love and approval depend on becoming someone acceptable, successful, or respectable. In trying to fulfill these expectations, people often lose touch with themselves. The danger lies not in labels themselves, but in believing they are the truth. When identity becomes fixed, growth feels threatening. Change becomes failure. Questioning feels disloyal. A person may spend decades defending a version of themselves that was never consciously chosen. The self becomes a performance maintained for others rather than a living, evolving experience. Letting go of identity does not mean rejecting culture, family, or responsibility. It means recognizing that these elements are descriptions, not definitions. They are tools for navigation, not the essence of being. When we mistake the map for the territory, we live second-hand lives, guided by inherited scripts rather than present awareness. Parental expectations, though often well-intentioned, can be especially binding. Parents project their fears, dreams, and unresolved ambitions onto their children. You will be this, they say, believing they are offering direction. The child, wanting love and belonging, accepts the role. Years later, the role remains, even when it no longer fits. Freedom begins with questioning. Who would I be without my name, my title, my nationality, my resume? What remains when all labels fall away? This question can feel destabilizing, even frightening, but within that uncertainty lies possibility. Without a fixed identity to defend, life becomes lighter. Experience replaces image. Presence becomes performance. To let go of identity is not to disappear, but to arrive. It is to meet life directly, without the filter of who you were supposed to be. In that space, action becomes authentic, not inherited. Choice becomes real. We are not the labels we were given. We are what remains when we stop believing them unquestioningly. Throughout life, we are taught to define ourselves through roles. We are actors in social narratives, professionals, citizens, family members, creators, achievers. These roles provide orientation and meaning, but they are not the essence of who we are. The true self does not belong to a profession, a nationality, or even a name. It exists beyond these constructs, in a space that is quieter, simpler, and far more intimate. Roles require maintenance. They demand consistency, explanation, and defense. An actor must remain recognizable. A citizen must align with a flag or a story. A name must be answered to, repeated, and reinforced. Over time, these roles accumulate like layers of clothing until it becomes difficult to remember what exists beneath them. The individual becomes identified with function rather than presence. Yet there are moments when the roles loosen their grip. In stillness, in exhaustion, in deep honesty, something else emerges. It is not loud or ambitious. It does not introduce itself. It does not seek recognition. It simply is. This quiet state of presence is often overlooked precisely because it has no image. It cannot be measured, promoted, or applauded. The true self has no need to prove anything. Proof belongs to performance. Roles exist to be validated by others. Presence exists without witnesses. When we are fully present, there is no audience and no script. There is only experience unfolding as it is. In such moments, the pressure to become something dissolves. Nothing is missing. Nothing is required. This is why the true self feels unfamiliar to many. It offers no identity to cling to. It cannot be introduced at a gathering or summarized in a sentence. It is felt rather than described. And because modern life is built on constant narration, profiles, achievements, opinions, presence often feels unproductive, even suspicious. We are taught to do, not to be. Nationality, profession, and reputation shape how others see us, but presence shapes how life is experienced from within. A person may change countries, careers, or names and remain deeply unsettled. Another may lose all external markers and yet feel grounded. The difference lies not in circumstance, but in contact with the self that exists before description. This quiet self is not passive. It is alert, responsive, and deeply alive. But it moves without strain. Action arises naturally, without the tension of self-definition. When this state is accessed, creativity becomes play rather than performance, and connection becomes genuine rather than strategic. To recognize the true self is not to abandon the world. Roles still function, names still serve their purpose, but they are held lightly. They no longer dominate identity. The person is free to step in and out of them without confusion or fear. In the end, the truest form of freedom is not becoming someone else, but resting as what has always been there. A quiet, cozy presence where nothing needs to be proven and nothing is missing. For many, the idea of disappearing carries fear. It is often misunderstood as a wish for annihilation, erasure, or escape from life itself. Yet there is another, quieter meaning of disappearance, one that does not threaten existence but releases it. This is the desire to disappear not as a being but as a role. In a world saturated with identity, visibility, and expectation, constant presence becomes exhausting. We are expected to be recognizable, consistent, and accessible at all times. Names, titles, reputations, and histories follow us everywhere. To disappear, in this sense, is not to cease to exist, but to step outside the demand to be someone in particular. This form of disappearance is strangely comforting. It offers relief from performance. The idea that one could simply stop maintaining an image, stop explaining, defending, or representing feels like rest. There is no audience to satisfy, no version of oneself to uphold. What remains is not emptiness, but spaciousness. The roles we inhabit often feel heavier than we realize. They accumulate silently. Each expectation adds weight. Be successful, be productive, be coherent, be admirable. Over time, the self becomes compressed beneath these layers. The desire to disappear arises not from despair, but from intuition, a sense that something essential is being crowded out. To disappear as a role means allowing the constructed self to dissolve. It means letting go of the constant narrative of me, my story, my image, my importance. This can feel dangerous at first because identity promises control, but the control is illusory. The relief comes when the effort to manage identity is no longer necessary. Importantly, this desire is not destructive. It does not reject life, it seeks a more honest relationship with it. When the role disappears, perception becomes clearer. Experience is no longer filtered through reputation or expectation. One can listen without preparing a response, act without anticipating judgment, exist without justification. Many moments of peace arrive in this way, unnoticed because they are ordinary. Walking without purpose, sitting quietly, observing without labeling. In these moments, no one is being anything. There is no character to maintain. And yet, life feels fuller, not diminished. The fascination with disappearance is ultimately a fascination with freedom. Freedom from constant self-reference, freedom from the pressure of continuity, freedom from the burden of being known. When the role fades, presence remains, awareness remains, being remains. This is why the idea of disappearing can feel beautiful rather than frightening. It is not a longing for absence, but for simplicity, not a wish to end, but a wish to begin again, without masks. To disappear as a role is to return to what exists before identity took shape. It is not the loss of self, but the uncovering of it.
Death is often described as humanity's greatest fear. We avoid speaking about it openly, surround it with superstition, and treat it as the ultimate threat. Yet beneath this fear lies something quieter and more complex. What many people truly long for is not death itself, but the release they imagine it brings, the moment when struggle ends, expectations fall away, and nothing more is required. Life, as it is commonly lived, demands constant participation. We are expected to perform roles, meet standards, defend identities, and pursue outcomes. From an early age, we learn that survival is not enough. We must justify our existence through achievement, productivity, and coherence. This ongoing effort creates exhaustion that is often mistaken for fear of death. When people speak about wanting rest forever, they are rarely expressing a wish to cease existing. They are expressing fatigue. Fatigue from explaining themselves, fatigue from competing, fatigue from maintaining an image that feels increasingly distant from their inner experience. The fantasy of death becomes appealing only because it appears to promise an end to performance. In this sense, death symbolizes freedom. Freedom from judgment, freedom from responsibility, freedom from the pressure to become something. It represents a state where no one is watching, evaluating, or demanding. But this freedom is not exclusive to death. It is a psychological and existential possibility available within life itself, though rarely encouraged. Society teaches endurance, not release. We are praised for resilience, persistence, and ambition, but rarely for surrendering unnecessary struggle. As a result, many people spend their lives fighting battles that no longer serve them, clinging to roles they have outgrown and identities that no longer fit. The idea of release becomes postponed to an imagined future rather than practiced in the present. What people truly seek is permission to stop striving, to stop proving worth, to stop carrying the weight of expectation. This permission is often projected onto death because life, as structured, seems to deny it. Yet moments of genuine peace show us another possibility. When resistance softens, when roles loosen, when attention returns to the present, relief arises without anything ending. The fear of death, then, is intertwined with a misunderstanding. It is not existence that feels unbearable, but the way existence is organized around constant effort. When effort drops, even briefly, life feels lighter, breathing deepens, time slows, the need to control dissolves. Understanding this changes the question entirely. Instead of asking why we fear death, we might ask why life feels so heavy. Instead of waiting for an ending to bring relief, we might explore what can be released now. Which expectations can be loosened? Which struggles are optional? Liberation does not require disappearance. It requires honesty, the courage to stop playing roles that no longer feel true.
When that happens, the longing for escape fades, replaced not by fear, but by presence. What we are waiting for has never been death. It has always been freedom. The idea of the soul has accompanied humanity for as long as we have asked who we are and why we are here. Some believe the soul is eternal, moving through experiences in search of understanding. Others doubt its existence entirely, seeing consciousness as a temporary phenomenon. Yet whether the soul exists as a metaphysical truth or not, the metaphor of the soul as a journey remains deeply meaningful. If the soul exists, it does not appear to be static. It does not arrive complete. Instead, it seems to wander through places, relationships, ambitions, and identities, learning through movement rather than destination. Each stage feels final while we are inside it, yet eventually loosens its grip. What once felt essential becomes optional. What once defined us fades. The journey continues. This wandering is often misunderstood as restlessness or failure to settle, but perhaps it is neither. Perhaps the soul, if it exists, is not meant to anchor itself too quickly. It moves because it is searching not for achievement, but for resonance, a sense of belonging that cannot be forced. The journey is not linear. It doubles back, pauses, accelerates, and sometimes appears to go nowhere at all. And then there is the possibility that there is no soul in the traditional sense, no invisible traveler, no final home waiting to be found. At first, this idea can feel unsettling, but it carries its own quiet freedom. If there is no soul searching for meaning, then nothing is missing. There is no unfinished task. There is simply being. In this view, existence does not need justification. Life does not need a destination to be complete. Moments are not stepping stones, they are the substance itself. Sitting quietly, breathing, holding a warm cup of tea, these experiences are not pauses between important events. They are the event. Interestingly, both perspectives arrive at a similar place. Whether the soul is a traveler or an illusion, the answer is presence. If the soul journeys, it eventually finds rest not in a location, but in acceptance. If there is no soul, rest was never absent. The urgency dissolves either way. Much of human suffering comes from treating life as a problem to be solved rather than an experience to be lived. We search for meaning as if it were hidden somewhere else, in success, enlightenment, or transcendence. But meaning often reveals itself in simplicity, not complexity, in moments when nothing needs to happen. A cup of tea becomes a symbol here, not because it is special, but because it is ordinary. It requires no belief system, it asks for no future, it is warm, present, and sufficient. In such moments, questions about the soul soften, the need to define dissolves. Perhaps the soul's destination, if it exists, is not a place at all, but a way of being. And perhaps the absence of a soul is not emptiness, but intimacy with life as it is. Whether traveling or simply resting, what matters is not the answer, but the gentleness with which we meet the moment. Sometimes that is enough.
Thank you for staying with me until the end. I hope this video gave you something to think about identity, the soul, and what it really means to be free from expectations. If you enjoyed it, don't forget to subscribe and hit the bell so you never miss a new video where we explore life, philosophy, and the questions that matter most. And before you go, check out some of my other videos. There's plenty more content that will make you pause, reflect, and maybe even challenge the way you see yourself in the world.